Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Week 5 review. I apologize for the delay. Some crazy events just unfolded in my life, and I don't really know if I'm going to be able to consistently upload throughout this week. It kind of just depends on how everything goes. I kind of just found an opening and was like, you know what? I should just do this damn video while I still can. So without saying too much in the limited time frame that we have, a like and subscribe would help. Let's get straight into this thing. TCU at ASU. I don't really need to talk about this one for too long. Just show my prediction, which was pretty close. Something I will give myself credit for when predicting ASU is I typically get the scores pretty close when I'm right. When I'm wrong, however, they're really far off. But final score 24-27. ASU all in all was a better team. We had 500 yards of offense to their 200 something. Yeah, 270. They turned the ball over 3 times, which 2 of those turnovers came right at the end of the game. They didn't necessarily need to give us those turnovers for us to score points. We were in the red zone multiple times. Those turnovers kind of just gave us the win. They were doing a good job of holding us in the red zone, but more around, it was just ASU couldn't find the red zone. The TCU defense wasn't anything crazy. ASU's a pretty good football team. After all, a game we'll get into later, their only loss doesn't look too bad right now. It's not horrible, and they lost it on an absolute heartbreaker. So ASU deserves to be back at the top 25. The fact that they're putting them at just 25 is kind of diabolical, me personally. But at least they put them back in and didn't screw them. But yeah, Florida State, Virginia, another one I already kind of talked about in another video. Florida State took a bad L. They only fall 10 spots in the poll. I don't think that was the worst thing ever. And Virginia is in the top 25. Who would have had that on their bingo card for this year? Virginia, University of Virginia, is in the top 25. They have to hit the road and play Louisville this week. That'll be a tough one. But ultimately, Florida State had more yards of offense. Both teams had equal turnovers, except Florida State was 3 for 5 on fourth down efficiency. Florida State had 24 more yards of penalties. And honestly, Florida State just shouldn't be losing a game like this. When push comes to shove, Florida State had more yards of offense, but they were converting less third downs, and they had less first downs, and they converted less fourth downs. They weren't making plays in the crucial moments of the game, and they weren't making plays in crucial points in the game. And Virginia was. And Virginia played a really tough game. Florida State had a missed field goal out of the second half, which definitely hurt because that's probably where their advantage in the yards came. And they unfortunately just weren't able to move the ball in overtime, and they threw it's counted as an interception, but I don't know. And then, of course, the crazy field storming. I don't necessarily think Florida State is that bad of a football team. They've still got a really good offense. Obviously, there's some defensive questions there. But maybe Virginia is just a pretty good team. After all, they are one of the highest scoring offensive teams in the country. They should have beaten North Carolina State, but they kind of played like Florida State in this one. Virginia could be undefeated right now. They kind of control their destiny in the ACC, surprisingly. If they beat Louisville on the road this week, they kind of have a walk in the park from this point on. They got Washington State, at North Carolina, at Cal, Wake Forest, at Duke, and Virginia Tech. They kind of have a walk in the park if they can manage to beat this Louisville team, which this was what I was saying last year for Virginia. They were a team that I was saying, keep an eye out for because of how easy their schedule was. And I thought they were just a little underrated, but unfortunately they weren't underrated, and they ended up just not being so good. But now, with a win like this, that really, really helps you out. And now they're in the top 25, which is really cool. And Lord knows Virginia football needed it. USC at Illinois. This one hurt my soul, which something I looked at recently is I think the quarterback for USC is second in passing yards right now, which is pretty interesting. And USC drops out of the top 25 very quickly. Just got in. But USC they really blew this one. They really blew this one. I would say I was pretty close. Unfortunately, I just got the victor wrong. Illinois at the end of the day had more yards of football. Both teams were very split in turnovers, but USC had the last possession. Well, they should have had the last possession. 2-minute timeout. They're driving down the field with an opportunity to win the game after a horrible red zone fumble. And they just, instead of taking their time, slowly pushing their way to the end zone, they take a shot for the end zone on the first play out of the 2-minute timeout, and they score a touchdown, giving Illinois all the time in the world to go down the field and score. I'm like, why don't you at least try to, move the ball a little bit, get Illinois to start burning some of their timeouts so you at least have the potential to put them on their heels, make them make a mistake, and win this ball game. No, they just score right away. They leave Illinois with 2 minutes and all 3 timeouts, and Illinois ends up playing the let's just go down the field and burn all of USC's timeouts and kick a game-winning field goal, and that's exactly what they did. USC did not have good coaching at the end of that game. And they end up losing a game they probably could have won, but overall super evenly matched teams in the Big Ten. Probably not a very good look considering how bad Illinois got beaten, but Illinois, they got a blessing staying in the top 25 after that absolute beatdown, but now they're still in the top 25, and yeah, they are still in the top 25, and they got kind of lucky there, and USC gets bonked out. Notre Dame at Arkansas, I believe they fired Arkansas fired their head coach after this game, or it was before. I don't remember. But I said Arkansas. I think if I remember correctly, I said Arkansas would be competitive for a little bit in this game before Notre Dame would just take it away. If that was what I said, wrong. Notre Dame just absolutely dog-walked Arkansas, and it kind of does suck because for the head coach, because, 2 games where he could have pulled off big wins, fell short on game-ending fumbles, and then you get blown out the door by Notre Dame, and now you don't have a coaching job. Notre Dame was absolutely dominant in this game, finally proving that they are a top 25 team. 641 yards of offense, no turnovers, 1 failed 4th down conversion, which I would assume came out of the second half when they were up 42-13. So it didn't really matter. Notre Dame gets Boise State next, North Carolina State after that, which keep an eye out for that one. USC after that, still keep an eye out. At Boston College, host Navy. At Pitt, host Syracuse. At Stanford. You could be looking at a 10-2 Notre Dame team. If they lose one more game, though, they might just be cooked. Because, you lose to Miami in a very close game. You lose to Texas A&M in an even closer game. But now you lose another one. It's like, well, you lost the games against competitive teams. Yes, you competed really well, but you lost. If you lose another one to a not very good football team, there's no championship that Notre Dame can win to get the automatic bid. They might be left out, which would be absolutely crazy. But they could. It depends on the records of teams this year. Notre Dame could get left out if they lose another game. Ohio State at Washington, unfortunate pick here because I originally had Ohio State winning this one, and I switched it at the last second, and I took Washington. Unfortunately for me, that just wasn't a very good pick. Washington, they honestly were super competitive for a while, and the final score looks a lot worse than it actually was. Going into halftime, the score was 7-3, and it was 14-6 going into the fourth quarter, 17-6 until midway in the fourth quarter. Washington was in this thing throughout until pretty much another touchdown by Ohio State with 5 minutes left, and that was that. Damon Williams Jr., man, I mean, I don't know if they weren't letting him throw the ball down the field or what, but he went 18 for 22 173 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Like, not a bad game, but just not really, moving the ball super much. And I guess he had 13 carries for negative 28 yards. I would assume that means Ohio State was getting in the backfield and getting a lot of sacks. Yeah, they had 6 sacks there. So, and Washington only had 1 sack. And ultimately, Ohio State was just, the better football team. I really thought Washington in this environment would have a good environment and it's really loud there and maybe cause some problems for Ohio State. Ohio State seems to be like the best team in the Big Ten every year. But sometimes there's just a random game where they hit the road against a team that isn't too crazy good, and they just lose. So I kind of thought that might be this one this year, but maybe Ohio State is just not in a situation like that. They do have to travel to Illinois, which could be interesting, but I highly doubt it. They have to play Penn State later. I highly doubt it. At Purdue, I wouldn't say so, but Purdue did, honestly, they did kind of compete with Notre Dame and they competed with USC, but it wasn't anything in particular like really good. They were kind of just getting dog walked in both games for a very large portion of time, but they managed to drop 30 points on Notre Dame. So, not the worst performance ever, but I would definitely say that's not the one there. I would say Ohio State can pretty much win. So I don't really know if there's much of a crazy upset game for Ohio State left on the schedule. They just got to watch out for Michigan at the end of the year. That's pretty much all there is to it. LSU at Ole Miss. This one was pretty easy to predict. And I kind of like how they approached this. They just switched the 2 positions of the teams in the top 25. They just put Ole Miss at 4 and LSU at 13. But I don't know. Ole Miss at 4 seems kind of crazy, kind of surreal. And, they definitely are a good-ass football team. Like, they don't even have what would be their starting quarterback. Even though they were in a tight quarterback battle, they don't have their starting quarterback. Yet they're still getting things done. And this was definitely a big win for them because, after all, LSU was the highest-ranked team in the SEC. Even though we all knew they weren't the best team, they were the highest-ranked team. And now Ole Miss is the highest-ranked team. That's just my problem with the rank swap is you just give them all this credit for beating LSU, who could very well fizzle out in front of our eyes, but you put them over Oklahoma and Texas A&M, who have beaten extremely good football teams so far. Like, maybe not Oklahoma, but I would say Texas A&M. That win over Notre Dame was extremely impressive. And but I could definitely see why they put Ole Miss at 4. It's understandable. And there's a lot of teams in the SEC that are ranked very highly right now. I mean, the entire top 10 is practically made up of SEC teams. The first 3 teams are all non-SEC, but then you just get 4, 5, 6 are all SEC. 9, 10, and 12 and 13 are SEC. 15 SEC, 16 SEC. There's a lot of SEC teams in the top 25 right now. It's kind of crazy. But honestly, it's definitely the SEC's wide open right now. Texas definitely has to figure things out because honestly, they could get upset this week against Florida. Billy Napier, I don't think he's been fired. Obviously, people think he should be fired, but I don't think he has been. And even though Texas has a very good defense, they will be in the swamp, and Arch Manning has struggled immensely. Texas could lose this game in turnovers, They could lose this game in turnovers. And A&M, they kind of have an easier schedule moving forward than the rest of these teams. They've just got tough road games. Oklahoma, they've got obviously Texas in the Red River rivalry. After that, I'm just skipping the ones that don't look like upsets. They've got Ole Miss at Oklahoma, at Tennessee, at Alabama, Missouri, LSU. Oklahoma has a juggernaut in front of them. But yeah, I mean, Ole Miss, this was a huge win that all of a sudden, you're in the driver's seat now. You're 3-0 in the conference. You're the highest ranked team out of all the SEC teams. You're in the driver's seat of the SEC, which is pretty crazy for Ole Miss. And in terms of LSU, haven't really talked much about them. This was just a matter of time. Their offense has just been struggling to figure anything out all season, and it really hurt them in this one. Ole Miss got up big. They got up 17-7 before halftime, but it honestly felt like LSU was putting something together. They weren't able to find the end zone, but they were finding field goals, and they were clawing their way back in, which honestly would have worked if they could have kept on consistently getting into field goal range. But unfortunately, they didn't, and Ole Miss found the end zone, which forced LSU to say, screw field goals, we need touchdowns. They scored late in the fourth, failed the 2-point conversion, and Ole Miss pretty much just iced the game from there. Yeah, they just went on a 11-play, 56-yard drive that took up 5 minutes, and they won the football game. The 4th and 2 they went for was wide open. But when you look at the yards and whatnot, Ole Miss was absolutely in control of this game. They were just beating themselves up. LSU 2 for 2 on 4th down efficiency, 2 for 11 on 3rd down efficiency, 256 yards, 1 interception, and 78 yards of penalties. Ole Miss 2 for 2 on 4th down efficiency, 8 for 16 on 3rd down efficiency. 484 yards of offense, basically 500, almost double LSU's yards of offense, but 14 penalties for 109 yards and 2 turnovers, an interception and a fumble. But also, just in general, LSU had 16 first downs, Ole Miss had 28. From a bird's eye view and stat watching, Ole Miss was absolutely in control of this game. And LSU was definitely doing a good job hanging in there, but, it's just not going to stay. And LSU actually got up first in this game. They had a big 50-yard pass that put them in scoring position, and they managed to score. And that looked really good for them. But, I mean, when you let Ole Miss go 18 plays, 83 yards, I mean, y'all, 18 plays, 83 yards. You just keep on letting them get more out of you. You just keep on letting them move the ball forward, slowly but surely getting towards the end zone. And you don't even let them score. They kick a field goal, which is good. But still, you're letting them on the field for 18 plays. Like, you got to make a play at some point. I guess technically they made the play before the end zone, forcing a field goal, which was good. But then LSU responds right after that with an interception. On a drive, they were actually moving the ball well on again. The first drive of the game, they went 3 and out. But then after that, LSU scored a touchdown, and then they were moving the ball well again, but it ended in an interception. And then from that point on, LSU was just punting the ball. They couldn't find any offense after that. They managed to get into field goal range in the third quarter. Then they, again, after an Ole Miss interception that set them up on a short field, they kicked another field goal. But again, I mean, the fourth quarter only saw 3 drives. Ole Miss went 11 plays, 75 yards, ate up 4 minutes and 4 minutes and 50 seconds of time. And then LSU kind of did the same thing back. They went 15 plays, 80 yards, 6 minutes, but that doesn't really help them in that scenario because they're down so much. They kind of need as much time as possible. And then again, they fail to get Ole Miss off the field, and Ole Miss just ices the game. There's 3 drives so right here where Ole Miss had 10-plus plays. And that 18-play field goal drive is just ridiculous. So, I mean, I've been yapping about this one for a while, but when you look at it, I didn't really get to watch this one because I had to work. So, of course, stat watching is one thing. Actually watching the game is another thing. So, that definitely plays into play here. But, I mean, Ole Miss was just a better football team. LSU's not a bad football team by any means. They're not. But they kind of, they lost this one, and they should have lost this one. Until they can find out offense that they literally have every capability for, they're just not going to be a good football team, and it's a real waste of potential because they have an offense. It's just not working for some reason. You know, I hate watching teams like ASU and LSU that have so much potential offensively, but they just can't find it and capitalize on it. Auburn at Texas A&M, another game where there was absolutely no offense. Auburn is going to do the same thing they did last year, and unfortunately, that's just the conference they play, and it's super competitive. And when you're Auburn and you're going up against every difficult team possible, it definitely is a lot more difficult than you think. But Auburn has an opportunity, and after the bye week, to beat Georgia. Yawn. They have an opportunity to beat Georgia, and they absolutely need to. And then after that, they have an opportunity to beat Missouri. That would be a huge break for Hugh Freeze and kind of put himself in a good position to keep his spot. Because I have a feeling if you lose to Georgia and Missouri, you might be in a spot where you're going to get fired. Because this dude has had good defenses every single year. And every Auburn game has really come down to the wire, and you kind of tune into an Auburn game and be like, look at the score, be like, holy shit, Auburn actually might win this football game, but they always lose. Their first win that, like, I actually witnessed in this Hugh Freeze era was against Texas A&M, and it was because the dude flat out dropped the ball in, like, quintuple overtime or something like that. Auburn has endlessly played these super close, defensive, tough, well-fought games, and they just haven't found a way to come out on top. And Texas A&M gave them every opportunity. You know, Texas A&M is absolutely trampling Auburn. Y'all, listen to this stat line. Auburn had 9 first downs, 0 for 13 on third down efficiency, and 0 for 2 on fourth down efficiency, 177 yards. Surprisingly, no regular turnovers, but they had 10 penalties for 69 yards. There was no form of offense for Auburn whatsoever. The Texas A&M defense was absolutely shutting down Auburn. But Auburn's defense was kind of doing the same thing to A&M. You know, A&M had 21 first downs and 414 yards of offense. So you're like, well, that doesn't sound like it at all. But practically every time they got A&M down to a third down, they forced them to punt. They were 3 for 14 on third down efficiency. But the problem is A&M offensively was 3 for 14 on fourth down efficiency, but they also had 13 penalties for 119 yards and an interception, which ironically for them, the interception ended up being the only reason that Auburn scored a touchdown. It was the only reason. It came in the fourth quarter, and all it took was one play, 2 yards, touchdown, and Auburn was right back into this thing. Their touchdown, yes, it came offensively, but it was a defensive touchdown. Texas A&M missed back-to-back field goals, and I don't know how they got the ball back because it says that that there was no turnovers for Auburn. Maybe they did an onside kick. I'm not sure. But it just says that they missed 2 field goals. And I'm not too sure how or like what the dealio is there. Maybe it's glitched. But Auburn, you know, they were like 4th and 10 at the A&M 41. You know, you're 1st and 10 at the A&M 41, and you just go 3 passes incomplete. I'm not sure what the play calling is there. And then on 4th and 10, Jackson Arnold runs for 6 yards and falls short. Like, I'm not really sure what the play calling is there. And that's something that Hugh Freeze came out and said was that we need to run the ball with Jackson Arnold more. Agreed. I mean, that's what won them the game against Baylor was they just ran the ball all over the place. And Jackson Arnold has been running the ball very efficiently all year. Yet he just wasn't running the ball. I'm just not too sure what that dealio is there. In 15 carries for 11 yards, and that was probably the yards is probably due to sacks by A&M. Yeah, they had 5 sacks. and he's still in the positive. Let him run the ball more. I don't know, man. Auburn is the same story every single year. They just started out differently this year because they just broke through against Baylor. Like they had a 98-yard kickoff return against Baylor, and then they had a 27-yard breakaway touchdown run on 4th down that pretty much put the game away against Baylor. Even though Baylor was probably absolutely the better team, Baylor had more yards of offense. They were just 3 for 6 on 4th down efficiency, and they let Auburn run for 307 yards, and Auburn had a kickoff return. So Auburn just managed to come out on top in the first game of this year, and now they're starting to lose games. But I still don't think they're all that bad. Georgia kind of got exposed a little bit, and they have to go off the bye week. They have to go to Auburn. Georgia has to go to Auburn, and that could be where Auburn turns things around, maybe. But I don't know. Texas A&M looks really good, though. They absolutely shut Auburn down this game. Indiana, Iowa. This one was actually a lot closer than I thought it would be. I kind of thought that Indiana was just going to steamroll Iowa, but maybe that means Iowa State is pretty good after all, and Iowa's good. But after Indiana's 63-10 win over Illinois, I thought they were coming off of just an absolute heater. Oh my goodness, there's quite the good game next week. I thought they were coming off an absolute heater, and they were just going to dog walk them offensively. And they started off with the touchdown off of a defensive turnover or off of a defensive interception. They scored very quickly. 2 plays, 24 yards. It looked like it was going to get bad very quickly. But then Iowa's defense absolutely shut Indiana down. And it pretty much came down to the wire. And honestly, Iowa should have probably won this football game, but a missed field goal that just gives Indiana too much momentum. They go right down the field and score, and then Iowa fails to score the touchdown that they need. And Indiana takes a safety. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to change that. It was 20-13 before the safety. Sorry, I forgot about that. So the final score was 20-15. But ultimately, I mean, if you're Indiana, you have 386 yards of offense compared to Iowa's 284. Iowa's 2 turnovers. You only have 1. There's really no reason you shouldn't be finding the end zone. It's 0 for 3 on 4th down efficiency. In a game like this where it's going to be defensive, I think you just got to take your points where it's given, 4th and 1 at the Indiana 48, you got to convert that. I mean, there's really no excuse there. 3rd and 12 at the Iowa 46, that's a bad turnover. Iowa was kicking themselves in the mouth with their turnovers. 10 plays, 70 yards, 4th and 1 at the Iowa 26. In a game, you're down. You're only up 7-3. I say you just take your field goal there, man, because ultimately then you would at least be tied, and then you could go into halftime up. But they don't. Iowa ends up scoring a touchdown off of a long drive, and Indiana scores a field goal right before halftime. I'm trying to find where the 3rd, 4th down failure was, but I can't find it. Maybe it was the safety at the end of the game. I would assume that's what it is. Maybe they're just counting the safety, a failed 4th down conversion. Probably, but Indiana was the better football team here, but props to Iowa for a super competitive football game. Tennessee and Mississippi State. God, this one was fun to watch, dude. When it's not ASU that Mississippi State's playing, it's fun to watch, but I still do think that their cowbells should be illegal. I kind of thought Tennessee was going to dog walk Mississippi State. They were going to dog walk the Bulldogs, but that just wasn't the case. I guess I just forgot to put overtime. I don't know what was wrong with me while I was making this. But Tennessee picks up a huge win, and Mississippi State was just kicking themselves in their teeth with their defensive with the defensive touchdowns that they were giving Indiana. Mississippi State turned the ball over twice. Tennessee turned the ball over 3 times. Both of Mississippi State's touchdowns resulted in touchdowns by the defense, a pick 6 and a scoop and score. Tennessee had more yards of offense in total, but yet the game was still this close because Mississippi State was doing a great job of stopping them on third down. 5 for 14 on third down efficiency to Mississippi State's 8 for 19. I mean, Tennessee had 100 more yards of offense, but largely a lot of that could be due to the drive right before the end of the game and some overtime yards because Mississippi State didn't end up finding the end zone in overtime. But, I mean, like two touchdowns from Mississippi State were off of short fields given by Tennessee, but nothing straight into the end zone. And the timing of the scoop and score that they gave Tennessee was so bad. With all the momentum in their favor to just get blindside drilled and fumble the ball, take it all the way back. I think it was off of a 4th and 7. They managed to convert it for a first down, and they went for it on their own 33. They converted it off of a 15-yard run. Oh, it was off of the fake punt. They went for a fake punt, took all the momentum just on the very next play to get absolutely blown up. And they got a scoop and score to the end zone. And it's just like all that momentum you just picked up from an extraordinary fake punt play call. And then you just throw it all away and you transfer it all to Tennessee. And, I mean, surprisingly, Mississippi State was able to drive for a field goal. And then another interception set Mississippi State up for a short field, but Tennessee would not go unheard. And honestly, what hurt even more was that Mississippi State had the final possession of the game. They had the final possession of the game, and they just weren't able to do anything with it. They had to punt the ball back to Tennessee inevitably, and then they lost it in overtime. Mississippi State is a good football team. They were just kicking themselves in their mouth with the mistakes. They couldn't take advantage of Tennessee's mistakes because they would just give them one right back. And it just hurts to watch them lose such a close game, even though they don't need it because they absolutely fucked ASU with that stupid bullshit broken coverage touchdown that should have never happened. It should have been reversed. ASU should have won and Tennessee should have lost. That's how it should have gone. U of A at Iowa State. Needeth I say more? Pretty close prediction by me. They got destroyed. Oregon at Penn State. It is time for James Franklin to go. I was saying this last year, and then they ended up doing really good in the college football playoff, but largely that was due to the fact that they didn't play really any competition. They played Boise State, and then they played SMU and Boise State, who ended up being complete frauds of teams. SMU, I still think they would have played better if it was a neutral site, but since they were in such a crazy whiteout crowd, Kevin Jennings threw interceptions and made mistakes and ultimately got destroyed. And Boise State, I knew they weren't going to win that game. They were overrated from the start. But Penn State, you know, those are their only two real ranked wins in the recent time. And then they get an opportunity with a late night whiteout crowd against Oregon. They get a chance to show them what the Big Ten is all about. And they just lose. I mean, I predicted that they would win a close one, and they lose. And let alone, they were down 17-3, and they managed to bring this shit all the way back, and then they just lose it in overtime. And then they just lose it in overtime, man. And it's just like, God, this coach cannot win the big games, and it just hurts to watch, especially since Oregon scores in overtime, but you get the stop on the 2-point conversion. And, what? Wait, what? Did they trade touchdowns in overtime? Oh, yeah, they traded touchdowns, so then they went on to the 2-point conversions. And you get the stop on the 2-point conversion, and then you just get picked off, and it's such a horrible pass. It's such a horrible interception. And Oregon wins the football game. Oregon looks like one of the best teams in college football right now. It'll come down to Oregon, Ohio State in the Big Ten Championship if they make it there to really, I mean, in my opinion, determine who the best team in the country is. But Penn State should have won this game, and they blew it. I mean, Oregon should have won this game if we're really talking, but then they started to blow it, and Penn State had their opportunity, and then all of a sudden they should have won the game, and then they blew their opportunity, and Oregon ended up winning. So Penn State hold this L. There's many more to come. Alabama at Georgia. I actually think this is our last game. Alabama at Georgia. I completely got shut up by Alabama. Georgia ended up losing this game. I said Georgia was going to dog walk them with how badly Florida State beat Bama. And Bama just didn't look good offensively or defensively. Even though I like Ty Simpson, I just thought there was levels to this shit. And there is. It's just Alabama's on it. Florida State apparently is just ahead. And it's just funny to me how Florida State wins over Alabama. They drop down to number 18. Alabama picks up a good road win against Georgia. And Georgia drops down to number 12. Why is Florida State at 18 with a win over number 10 Alabama? But when Alabama's best win is number 12 Georgia, it just doesn't make sense why Florida State has to drop down 10 spots. But Alabama and Georgia don't get docked as many points. But ultimately, I mean, Alabama came out swinging. And, I mean, Kalen DeBoer needed this one. This was a huge win for Kalen DeBoer. His team played absolutely elite football. They were just playing so disciplined. 25 first downs, 13 for 19 on third down efficiency. Unfortunately, 0 for 1 on fourth down efficiency, but still, they were playing such good football. 13 for 19 on third down efficiency. Every time Georgia had them backed up against the wall, they practically converted it almost every single time. They didn't turn the ball over once except for on fourth down. Georgia failed a fourth down conversion and had a fumble. Alabama only had 16 yards of penalties in 4 penalties. Georgia had 6 penalties for 68 yards. Alabama had more yards of offense. They deserve to win this game, and they do. Good win for Alabama. I've completely changed my mind about Alabama as a football team, and really big win there for them. You know, super, super important win that they picked that up. And that's all for the review video. I will try to do the NFL video soon. I'm just not sure with what is going on in my life if I will be able to have the time, but I will sure as hell try. With that being said, a like and subscribe would help. A comment always helps. That's all for me. Adios.